تعجل بالقرآن من قبل أن يقضى إليك وحيه وقل رب زدني علما.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. Tonight then, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to be discussing a hadith from the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that is the hadith reported or narrated by Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma, where he mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Kullukum ra'in وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته، فالأمير الذي على الناس راع عليهم وهو مسؤول عنهم، والرجل راع على أهل بيته وهو مسؤول عنهم، والمرأة راعية على بيت بعلها وولده وهي مسؤولة عنهم، وعبد الرجل راع على بيت سيده وهو مسؤول عنه، ألا فكلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته." In this narration, which is mentioned, or versions of it that are mentioned in Al-Bukhari, in Muslim, in the Sunan of Abu Dawood, of At-Tirmidhi, and in other places too, in this hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "All of you are shepherds. All of you are shepherds, and all of you are responsible for your flock. The Amir, the leader, is in responsibility over his subjects, over his civilians, and the man is a shepherd over his household, and he is responsible for his family, and the woman, the wife, is a shepherd upon the house of her husband, and upon the children, and she is in responsibility upon that, and the servant of a man is a shepherd upon the house of his owner, and he is in responsibility over that." So then at the end of the hadith it says, "Ala fakullukum ra'in." All of you are shepherds. "Wa kullukum mas'ulun 'an ra'iyatih." And all of you are responsible for your flock. The purpose of this narration is to highlight that we all have responsibilities. We all have responsibilities over those who are in or under our responsibility. So in the beginning of this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned about the ruler, that the ruler is a shepherd over his subjects, over the civilians in his land, his subjects. He is in responsibility over them, just like the man is in responsibility over his household. And it is mentioned in the explanation of the hadith, في هذا الحديث يرشد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كل فرد من أمته إلى القيام بواجبه نحو ما خوله الله عليه. That the messenger is highlighting to us, we all have our responsibilities to fulfill over the people who are under our care. Those who are under our care, they are under our responsibility, then we have to fulfill that obligation, that responsibility regarding them. فيخبر صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه ما من مسلم في هذه الأمة إلا وتحته من يرعاهم ويتحمل مسؤوليتهم. So the messenger is highlighting to us that there is not a Muslim except that there is a responsibility upon his shoulders in regards to those whom he is in charge over, those whom he has the responsibility over. And that's why the messenger said, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. All of you are shepherds, and all of you are responsible for your flock. والرعي هو حفظ الشيء وحسن التعهد له. والراعي هو الحافظ المؤتمن الملتزم صلاح ما قام عليه. So the shepherd, the meaning of all of you are shepherds, is that you are guardians. You are guardians over those who are under your responsibility, that you must look after those who are under your responsibility, and you must be trustworthy in your guardianship of them, in doing what is best for them, in taking their best interests to heart. فكل من كان تحت نظره شيء فهو مطالب بالعدل فيه والقيام بمصالحه في دينه ودنياه ومتعلقاته. فإن وفى ما عليه من الرعاية حصل له الحظ الأوفر والجزاء الأكبر، وإن كان غير ذلك طالبه كل أحد من رعيته بحقه، والله عز وجل سائله عن تلك الرعية إن فرط في حقوقها. So that person now must fulfill that guardianship of his in the trustworthy and upright manner, and if he does not do so, then those people who he had responsibility over, they will come seeking their rights from him because he failed them and did not fulfill the responsibilities he had for them. So there is a reward for the one who fulfills that responsibility, but there is a threat upon the one who does not fulfill that responsibility. So the first one that is mentioned in the hadith is the responsibility of the ruler, the Muslim ruler, his responsibility over his subjects. ثم فصل صلى الله عليه وسلم ما أجمله فالإمام الأعظم الخليفة راع فيما استرعاه الله فعليه حفظ رعيته فيما تعين عليه من حفظ شرائعهم والذب عنها وعدم إهمال حدودهم وتضييع حقوقهم وترك حمايتهم ممن جار عليهم. So the ruler has a responsibility over the subjects in his authority, under his authority. He must look after their needs. He must fulfill what they require and be just with them. He must safeguard them and be in their service in making sure that his subjects are upon the correct and upright manner of behavior and lives, that they are fulfilling the religion and the Sharia is being implemented. The ruler is a shepherd over his flock, and the flock of the ruler, those who he is in charge of, are his subjects in his country. And so that is a great responsibility upon the ruler. And we know in the hadith about the 7 people who are shaded on the day of judgment. سبعة يظلهم الله في ظله يوم لا ظل إلا ظله. 7 categories of people who Allah will shade in His shade on a day when there is no other shade save His. One of the categories is Imamun Adilun, a just Imam, a just Imam, a righteous Imam, ruler, who treated and dealt with his people upon justice and fulfilled the rights of his people upon justice. Imamun Adilun, a righteous, upright leader, is from the categories who are shaded on that day when there is no shade save His. The second category mentioned is Ar-Rajulu fi Ahlihi, the man of the household, that you have a responsibility to safeguard your family, to make sure that your wife and your children are safeguarded, meaning not from just the physical threats, but that they are safeguarded from all types of wrong and haram, that you make sure your household is a household upon the sunnah, a household that has no haram within it, a household that is implementing the Quran, implementing the sunnah, teaching your children upon that way, giving them the correct tarbiyah, the correct upbringing, because Allah told us in the Quran, قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا, protect yourselves and your families from the fire. So how do you protect yourselves and your families from the fire? That fire whose fuel is men and stone, you protect yourselves and your families by ensuring that they are educated upon the Quran and Sunnah, that your household is implementing the Quran and Sunnah, that it is far from any type of haram ever entering into it, that it is a household where obedience and worship is done within it, a household where prayer is done within it, the recitation of the Quran is done within it. That is from the means of protecting yourselves and your families from the fire. That is from the means of fulfilling your role as the shepherd over your flock, the shepherd over your household. And that is the role of the husband, and as the hadith comes on to mention later on, there is a role for the wife, for the mother within that too. It is the responsibility of the father and also the mother. She is also a shepherd within the household. She also has the responsibility with her children, particularly for the mothers with their daughters, and the fathers more so with their sons, to make sure that they are getting the correct tarbiyah, the correct cultivation, the correct upbringing, so that the daughters are raised with modesty and they are raised with that humbleness and shyness, and they are not raised upon the ways of the disbelievers, that they have no shyness and they have no modesty, and they do not cover when they exit their homes, but rather you are the shepherd over your flock, and the mothers are also the shepherd over their children, to make sure that they are being raised in the correct way. So the daughters are raised upon modesty and shyness, and raised upon the role models of the likes of Aisha radiyallahu anha and Khadija radiyallahu anha, the great female companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the sons, that they are raised in a manner of honor and dignity, in a manner of having the muru'ah, the dignity of an individual, the honor and nobility that a person has, the integrity in their religion. You raise them upon the characteristics of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Raise them upon the good characteristics, the good manners and morals and behaviors, and you keep them away from the evil characteristics and evil behaviors and evil traits, and you forbid the lying to occur from them, and you forbid the backbiting to occur within your household, and you forbid the storytelling and namima to occur within your household. These are all from the meanings of you being a shepherd over your household. You ensure that your children are being raised connected to the Quran and the Sunnah, connected to the mosque, connected to learning, so that they are not left to their own devices, left to go on the streets, left to make their friends on the streets, and so that they grow up in drugs and grow up in crime and grow up in all of the other affairs of evil that exist on the streets. If a person allows his children to be raised in that way, then you are not fulfilling your role as the shepherd over your household. Then you are not fulfilling your role if you allow your children to grow up on the streets, out with the people who do not pray, out playing with the people who do not care about their religion at all, out on the streets getting into smoking and drugs and other crime. You are not fulfilling your responsibility, and as parents, you will be questioned about it on Yawmul Qiyamah. You will be questioned over your responsibility that you had for your children, and if you did not fulfill that responsibility, then you will be questioned upon that as to why you did not fulfill your responsibility, and you'll be held accountable upon that. So every man is a shepherd over his family, over his wife and children. The man is also a shepherd over his wife to ensure that his wife is also upon modesty and covering, and his wife is upon practice of the religion and praying. The husband has that responsibility with his wife too, and the wife likewise can encourage and advise her husband where there is a need to do so. But in particular, her role on top of that will be to safeguard the home of her husband, and to safeguard the children and make sure that they are being raised in the right way, that they are being raised as or with good role models for them in their parents. But if the parents themselves, they do not pray, and the parents themselves, they know nothing about the Quran and the Sunnah, the parents themselves, they allow the haram to occur in the house. They bring in the haram into the house. The parents themselves waste their time, and there is no importance given to learning the Quran and the Sunnah and its implementation, to learning knowledge, to practicing the religion. Then what do you expect if your children end up upon that same way, and they are not practicing their religion, and they are not praying, and they do not even learn the prayer, and they are not reciting the Quran or memorizing it? The parents will be responsible for that on Yawmul Qiyamah. That is what the Messenger is telling us. كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. All of you are shepherds, and all of you are responsible for your flock. You are responsible for the correct upbringing and tarbiyah of the children. But that does not mean to say that the children themselves are excused. They need to make sure that they are trying their best to learn and practice the religion, and that they are fulfilling the rights of their parents and obeying their parents. The children must make sure of that too. And in the same hadith that we mentioned earlier about the 7 categories of people who are shaded on that day, another one of the categories is شاب نشأ على عبادة الله, a youth who is raised, grows up upon the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A youth who is raised and grows up in obedience to Allah, worshipping and praying. That is how his youthhood was. upon obedience and practice of the religion, then that type of person is also from those who are shaded on that day when there is no shade save the shade of Allah. So these are the responsibilities. From the main responsibilities is that of education. That the parents, the father, the mother, they must educate their children regarding this religion. Educate them and teach them about the prayer, how to pray. Learn the words, learn the actions, teach them about this worship and the other forms of worship. Educate them about Tawheed, educate them about Aqidah. That role of education is upon the parents. And if the parents themselves are incapable because they themselves do not know, then they can still fulfill that role by bringing their children to the gatherings of knowledge where they can learn, bringing the children and encouraging their children to attend the gatherings of knowledge, the gatherings where you learn about your religion, you learn about Allah, you learn about the speech of Allah in the book of Allah. You learn about the hadith and what the Prophet ﷺ taught us. Then that is something the parents can do in fulfilling their responsibility towards their children. And so then it is hoped that they will be righteous children that are raised. And then it is mentioned that when a person dies, إذا مات العبد انقطع عنه عمله إلا من ثلاث صدقة جارية علم ينتفع به وولد صالح يدعو له. When a person dies, all of your deeds, they are cut off except three things: sadaqah jariyah, the ongoing charity, the charity that you give to a mosque, for example, and you die, but you'll continue to reap the rewards of that charity. The mosque will still be operating, the people will still be benefiting. And the second thing that you continue to reap the rewards for even after death is knowledge that you leave behind. Knowledge that you leave behind, and people benefit from that knowledge even after your death. Then that is something which also allows you to reap the rewards of even after death. But the third one, and the point for now, is the waladin salihin yad'u lah, a righteous child who will make dua for his parents after they die. That righteous child who makes dua for his parents after they die, then the parents, they benefit from the dua of their child. They benefit from that, from the dua their children make for them after they pass away. But what do you expect if you do not raise your children upon righteousness? Then will they be from those who make dua for you after you die? Or will they be from those who do not even remember you and do not even care? That is a responsibility you have initially, to raise your children in the right way, so they be from the righteous who make dua for their parents. In another hadith it is mentioned a person is raised up in the levels of paradise. So he says, "My Lord, what did I do to be raised up into higher levels of paradise, or to be raised up in rank?" it will be said to him, because of the dua your child made for you. Because of the dua your child made for you. So it is a great responsibility for the parents to understand this narration. كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. All of you are shepherds and all of you are responsible for your flock. And then in the narration it mentions some of the other categories as well. And the point of them all is the same. There are other narrations, or there are even ayat, in fact. There are ayat in the Quran that speak about this type of subject matter. For example, in Surah Taha 132, Allah mentions, وَأْمُرْ أَهْلَكَ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَاصْطَبِرْ عَلَيْهَا, and command your family to pray and be patient upon that. That is from the fulfillment of your rights with your family, that you command them with the prayer, you enjoin the good within your home, and you forbid the evil. And in At-Tahrim, ayah number 6, يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا. O you who believe, protect yourselves and your families from the fire. And in the hadith that we have just mentioned also, that all of you are shepherds and responsible for your flock. As Shaykh bin Baz rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned, هذه النصوص تتعلق بوجوب قيام الرجل على أهل بيته. These evidences, they highlight the obligation for a man to fulfill his responsibility regarding his family. من زوجة وأولاد وخدم وأيتام يوجههم إلى الخير. So his wife, his children and others, the orphans perhaps he's looking after, he guides them all to goodness and directs them and encourages them to goodness. يأمرهم بطاعة الله. He commands them to worship and be obedient to Allah. وينهاهم عن معاصي الله. And he forbids them from the disobedience against Allah. And the Messenger himself implemented all of this. So he would command his family with the prayer, his wives and his children, and a person likewise does that. You do not see that your family is not praying and sit there silently. You do not see that your children are not praying and sit there silently. You are failing to fulfill your responsibility if your children who are supposed to be praying are not praying and you do not say anything to them. Rather, you must. It is your responsibility to make sure that your children who are supposed to be praying are praying. And it's your responsibility to make sure that they learn the prayer and how to pray. And when Allah said, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ. Protect yourselves and your families from the fire. the fire whose fuel is men and stone. Shaykh bin Baz said, فَأَمَرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ جَمِيعًا أَنْ يَقُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ وَأَهْلِيهِمْ عَذَابَ اللَّهِ. That Allah commanded all the believers to protect themselves and their families from the punishment of Allah. وَذَلِكَ بِالتَّوْجِيهِ وَالتَّأْدِيبِ وَالْإِرْشَادِ وَالْأَمْرِ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَالنَّهْيِ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. And all of that through guiding them and counseling them and directing them to the good, enjoining the good in your household and forbidding the evil. وَالتَّوَاصِي بِالْحَقِّ, and enjoining and counseling one another upon the truth. كُلُّ هَذَا مِنْ أَسْبَابِ الْوِقَايَةِ. All of that is then from the means of protecting yourself from the fire. So then Shaykh bin Baz mentions at the end that the narration when it says كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ, all of you are shepherds and all of you are responsible for your flock, that it applies to everyone, even somebody who may be one of the siblings, that you can try to enjoin the good and forbid the evil with your other siblings, especially if you are the older one. And even if you are not, if you see from your siblings that they are upon some evil or upon some wrongdoing, you do what you are capable of. You may not have authority, but you do what you're able, and you enjoin the good and forbid the evil, because that is one of the principal and foundational aspects of this ummah. As Allah told us in the Quran, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر, that you are the best of the nations raised from mankind, because you enjoin the good and you forbid the evil. But as for the disbelievers, Allah said about them, كانوا لا يتناهون عن منكر فعلوا, that they did not used to prevent each other from the evils that they did. They did not enjoin the good and forbid the evil. They allowed each other to continue upon the evil. But the believer enjoins the good and forbids the evil. And that is from the foundational aspects of this religion, from the characteristics that raised this ummah, the enjoining of the good and the forbidding of the evil. So this is a very important narration regarding how the Messenger told us we are all responsible. We have responsibility on our shoulders, whether we are fathers, whether we are mothers, whether we are siblings to our siblings, whether we are to our neighbors. We have responsibilities to fulfill and rights to fulfill, to protect ourselves and our families from the fire. And from the main methods of that, as we mentioned, is education and knowledge, to make sure that you're learning the Quran and the Sunnah, you're attending the gatherings of knowledge. It is very important to do that on a regular basis, yourselves and your families to attend the gatherings of knowledge, to attend the circles of knowledge, to hear the Sunnah, to hear the ayat of the Quran. That is better for you and your families and your children, and it will make it a better household for you when you're all learning and implementing the religion properly. So strive with the attendance in the gatherings of knowledge, strive to put that time aside for yourselves and your families and bring them to have that blessed time and participate within it in learning your religion, and perhaps you learn the affairs that may become the means for your success in the afterlife. So it is important to bear this in mind, that the Messenger told us, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. All of you are shepherds, and all of you are responsible for your flock, for those who are under your charge. That is perhaps the brief reminder. We'll have to just cut it slightly short on that.